Hi mathematicians, in this video I am going to go over the study guide for your mastery, and please remember that you are allowed to use this study guide on your mastery, so write down everything and make sure you understand. Since question 1A asks for the y-intercept, I'm going to revisit the portion of our notes that involves the y-intercept. And this equation is in standard form. And remember the number here at the end, that letter C, is what gives you the y-intercept. In this equation, we're given an A and a B, but C, just the plain number, is not given. When that happens, that means that C is actually a 0. So that would mean that the coordinate of the y-intercept is 0, 0. But if the equation is confusing for you, remember the other way that you can do it is you can just use the Desmos graphing calculator and you can get a graph of the parabola. And remember that your y-intercept is where the graph hits the y-axis. So that's the vertical axis. So where does the graph hit the vertical axis? It hits it right here at 0, 0. So that is another way that you could get the answer for this question. You can just type the graph into Desmos and get the answer. We also need to figure out what is the coordinate of the vertex. And remember that the vertex is this corner piece here. So because I already have it typed into Desmos, I'm going to use this graph. And actually, that is the only way I can get this answer, is by typing it into Desmos. It's the only way we know how to do it right now. So the coordinates are going to be 2.5 and negative 6.25. And again, I got those by looking here at the vertex of my graph after I typed it into the Desmos graphing calculator. Next, it asks if the graph opens upward or downward. And remember that if your A is positive, which in this case it is a positive 1, it opens upward. So I don't need the graph in order to identify that, but since I do already have the graph here, I can also see that, of course, it is pointing upward. The last part of the question asks what are the coordinates of the x-intercepts? And remember that the x-axis is this one that goes in this direction. And we have a weird case where the y-intercept that we got for our last answer is also an x-intercept too, because 0, 0 is on both the x and the y-intercept. So my x-intercepts, which I got from the graph again, are 0, 0, and 5, 0. And again, we can see those over here on the graph. Now that I have worked problem 1 for you, problem number 2 is exactly the same. So you please try number 2 on your own and then use the included answer key to check and make sure that you've got it right. If not, feel free to ask me questions, guys. For problem number 3, we're going to use this section of our notes again. And so if I look at the format of the equation that I'm given, it doesn't give me any numbers, but I can tell that it's in standard form. And I can tell that this is in standard form because of the notes that I have here. And it asks for the y-intercept. Well, in this example, it doesn't tell me what the y-intercept is. It just gives me the letter C, And I know that the y-intercept is found by the letter C because I remember that from this portion of my notes right here, that C represents the y-intercept. But since I don't know what number it is, the answer I'm going to put here is just C. Whatever my C value is, 0, comma C, that will be the y-intercept. So, and again, I know from the notes that this equation is in standard form. So I'm going to fill in the blank standard. And if I look at my notes, standard form tells me the direction, whether my graph goes upward or downward, and it tells me the y-intercept. And that is all that it tells me. So here it says the x-intercept. I'm going to say that standard form does not show the x-intercept. So on the test, if it asks you to use standard form to find an x-intercept, you can't do it. Finally, in standard form, remember that A is the number that is here in the very front of the parabola. This is A. And if A, in this case, is less than 0, because that's what that symbol means, that means that A is going to be a negative number. And if A is a negative number, the graph points downward. So that means that I am going to write the word downward. Number 4 is most easily attacked if you plug the equation that you're given into Desmos. And remember, don't use the t that you're given in the equation, and don't use the h of t. Use x and y. Type it into the equation just like this. So in this situation, we have a helicopter that is dropping something from the helicopter. And the first thing it asks for is the time when it hits the ground. And remember that we use time, we use the x-axis to represent time. So on my graph, I'm looking at this area here. And even though we have a graph over here on this side, we are not going to use this side of the graph, because if we used this side in real life, we would be saying that time, which remember is our x, we would be saying that time could be negative because there are negative numbers over here. But we know that time cannot be negative. So to answer this problem, we are only going to look at this side of the graph. So the time on the positive side, where it hits the ground, if I zoom in right here, I see that my x-coordinate is 7. So that means that it hit the ground after 7 seconds, because our problem does say it's being measured in seconds. For explain your reasoning on the test, you can say it was the positive x-intercept, that is the place that it shows where it hit the ground, even though there is a negative x-intercept over on this side. We can't use it because that would mean that there's negative time. What height is the object dropped? We can also see that on our graph because this is our initial height, which the math word we use for it is the, y-intercept. So if I look at my y-intercept, I see the value right here is 686 meters. So that is the height that it was dropped from. And for explain your reasoning, you can just say it's the y-intercept. That is enough of an explanation for me. Number 5 is exactly like number 4. So using this example, please try to solve number 5 yourself. And of course, let me know if you have questions.